August comes home. The house on Cedar Row was silent when August came back. No music, no shouting, no lights. The police report would later say the neighbors noticed nothing unusual, but silence was normal for the Morris house. Silence had always been their weapon. August arrived just after midnight. A taxi dropped him off at the end of the street. He stood there for a moment, staring at the dark outline of the house he grew up in, the house that shaped him, the house that never felt like home. He hadn't planned to come back, but something had snapped inside him weeks earlier. Years of anger, humiliation, and control had piled up until his mind felt like it was burning from the inside. He needed answers. He needed release. He walked up the driveway slowly, his boots crunching on the gravel. The front door was locked, just like it always was. Eleanor believed locked doors kept evil out. She was wrong. August pulled a spare key from beneath the old stone planter, the same place it had been hidden for 20 years. The door opened. Inside, the house smelled exactly the same. Old furniture, cleaning chemicals, fear. The living room was neat to the point of obsession. Everything in its place, nothing out of order. Family photos lined the wall, but August's face was missing from most of them. Where he did appear, his eyes had been scratched out. He noticed that detail every time. His parents were asleep upstairs. August stood at the bottom of the staircase, listening to their breathing through the floor. He felt his hands shake, not from fear, but from memory. His father's voice echoed in his head. "Stand straight. Don't speak unless spoken to. You embarrass us." His mother's voice followed. "Why can't you be normal? Why do you make everything difficult?" August clenched his fists. Tonight, no one would control him. Raymond Morris woke up to the sound of footsteps. He opened his eyes slowly, heart already racing. He had learned long ago to wake up at the smallest sound. "Eleanor," he whispered. No answer. The bedroom door creaked open. August stood there, silhouetted by the hallway light. Raymond sat up instantly. "August," he said, forcing calm into his voice. "What are you doing here?" August didn't answer. Eleanor woke next. She gasped when she saw her son. "You weren't invited," she said sharply. "You can't just come here whenever you want." August laughed softly. "That's funny," he said. "You never needed an invitation to ruin my life." Raymond stood up, chest out, trying to look authoritative. "You need to leave," he ordered. "Now." August stepped into the room. "You still think you're in charge," he said quietly. Eleanor reached for her phone. August was faster. He grabbed it from her hand and threw it against the wall. It shattered into pieces. Eleanor screamed. Raymond moved toward August, raising his hand. August grabbed his father's wrist and twisted hard. Raymond cried out in pain and fell to his knees. Years of control collapsed in 1 second. The neighbors would later say they heard screaming. They would say it sounded like animals fighting. No one called the police. No one ever did. Inside the Morris house, everything fell apart. August paced the room like a caged beast, shouting words he had held in for decades. "You threatened people," he yelled. "You destroyed families. You taught me that power comes from fear." Raymond begged. Eleanor cried. They told him they only wanted order, respect, control. August laughed. "You wanted a monster," he said. "You raised one." The violence didn't last long, but the damage was permanent. When the police arrived in the morning, the house was quiet again. Raymond Morris lay unconscious, his body broken in ways that would never fully heal. Eleanor sat in the corner, staring at the wall, whispering the same sentence over and over. "It's not my fault. It's not my fault." August was gone. News traveled fast. That was how I heard about it. The caller didn't give details. Just fear. Just panic. Just enough to pull me back into the nightmare I thought I had escaped. For days, I couldn't stop thinking about that house. About the fence. The letters. The threats. Had August been watching us all those years? Had we been part of his rage? I told myself it wasn't my problem anymore. Then the letter arrived. It was mailed to my new address. No return name. Inside was a single sheet of paper, written in shaky handwriting. "You were right to leave." That was all. My blood ran cold. Only one person knew where we lived now, and he had just come home. The letter knows my name. I didn't tell anyone about the letter. Not my parents. Not my sister. Not even my closest friend. Some fears feel too dangerous to speak out loud. Once you give them a voice, they feel real, alive. I burned the letter that same night. I watched the paper curl and blacken in the sink, the words disappearing into ash. But the feeling didn't burn away with it. It stayed, heavy in my chest. You were right to leave. It wasn't a threat. That was what scared me the most. Life tried to go back to normal. I went to work. I laughed at jokes I didn't hear. I slept with the lights on. Every noise outside my apartment made my heart jump. Footsteps in the hallway, doors closing, someone laughing too loudly. I started checking the locks 3 times before bed, then 4, then 5. I told myself I was being paranoid, until my name appeared again. The second message didn't come by mail, it came online. I was scrolling through an old social media account I barely used anymore. A notification popped up from an unknown profile. No photo, no friends. Just a gray silhouette. Message request. I hesitated. Then I opened it. You've changed since Cedar Row. You look tired. Fear does that. My hands went numb. I typed back without thinking. Who is this? The response came instantly. Someone who remembers the fence. I slammed the laptop shut. My heart felt like it was trying to tear out of my chest. That night, I dreamed of the Morris house. The fence was gone. There was nothing separating our yard from theirs anymore. August stood in the middle, smiling. When I woke up, my phone was vibrating. Unknown number. I let it ring. It stopped. Then a text appeared. We should talk. I didn't reply. 5 minutes later, another message. I'm not my parents. I stared at the screen for a long time. Finally, I typed one word. How? The dots appeared, disappeared, appeared again. Because I know what they did to you. I met August 3 days later. I don't know why I agreed. Maybe part of me wanted answers. Maybe part of me wanted to face the fear instead of letting it rot inside me. We met in a public place, a quiet cafe near the river. Windows everywhere, people around, escape routes. August was already there when I arrived. He looked different, thinner, older. His eyes were darker, deeper, like they had seen things they couldn't forget. He didn't smile. Thanks for coming, he said softly. I didn't sit down. You sent the messages, I said. He nodded. I needed you to know it was me. My voice shook. Why? August stared into his coffee. Because you were the only ones who left, he said. Everyone else stayed. Everyone else played along. I sat down slowly. You terrorized us, I said. Your family did. I know. You threatened my sister. I know. You destroyed our peace for years. August finally looked up at me. And my parents destroyed me for a lifetime. He told me things I never expected to hear. About growing up under constant control. About punishment for small mistakes. About being taught that fear was the only way to keep power. They practiced on me first, he said quietly. He told me how the fake legal letters were his father's idea. How the harassment became a game. How Eleanor enjoyed watching people break. And you? I asked. August's jaw tightened. I learned, he said, too well. I thought of the scratches on the fence, the whispers, the smile. Why contact me now? I asked. Because I'm trying to stop, he said. And because I think my parents aren't done yet. I laughed bitterly. You nearly killed them. Yes, he said, and they still won't let go. 2 days later, Raymond Morris was discharged from the hospital. 3 days after that, Eleanor disappeared. The police called it stress, a breakdown. A confused elderly woman wandering off. August called me at midnight. She's gone, he said. And I replied. And when she disappears, he said, bad things happen. That same week, strange things started again. Not to me. To the new family living in our old house. I recognized the address instantly when I saw it on the local news. Unexplained vandalism. Threatening notes, property dispute claims, same pattern, same beginning, different victims. I called August immediately. She's doing it, I said. Your mother. Silence on the line. Then he whispered, no. What do you mean, no? She can't be, he said. Because she's been staying with me. My blood ran cold. I went to his place that night. I needed to see her. I needed to understand. Eleanor Morris sat on the couch, wrapped in a blanket, staring at nothing. She looked small, fragile, broken, but when her eyes met mine, I saw it. Recognition. A slow smile formed on her lips. "You came back," she said gently. I stepped away. "You never should have left," she continued. "This all could have been avoided." August stood between us. "Mother," he said firmly. "Stop." She laughed. "Oh, August," she said. "You still think this ends with you?" She turned to me. "You see," Eleanor whispered, "fear doesn't belong to one house. It spreads." Suddenly, she reached into the blanket. August shouted my name, and that was when I realized she hadn't disappeared. She had been planning. The smile behind the knife. Everything happened in seconds. Eleanor's hand slid out from under the blanket. There was no gun, no bomb, just a knife. Small, kitchen-sized, ordinary. That was what made it terrifying. August lunged forward and grabbed her wrist just as she tried to stand. The knife clattered to the floor, spinning once before stopping near my feet. No one moved. The room felt frozen in time. Eleanor didn't fight. She smiled. "See," she said softly, still protecting strangers. August's hands were shaking as he forced the knife away. "Why?" he shouted. "Why won't you stop?" Eleanor tilted her head, studying him like a puzzle. "Because fear works," she replied calmly. "It always has." I backed toward the door. My legs felt weak, like they might give out at any moment. The woman sitting in front of me wasn't fragile. She wasn't broken. She was focused. "You should leave," August said without turning around. "Now." I didn't argue. As I reached the door, Eleanor spoke again. "You think you're safe because you ran," she said. "But fear remembers faces." I slammed the door behind me, and didn't stop running until I reached my car. That night, the police took Eleanor Morris into custody. Not for the knife, for the letters, for the harassment, for violating a restraining order she wasn't supposed to know existed. But even in handcuffs, she looked calm, satisfied. Raymond Morris refused to speak to anyone. Doctors said his injuries had left him partially paralyzed. His voice was weak. His hands barely moved. The man who once controlled everything could no longer even feed himself. The news called it a tragedy. I called it justice. I thought it was over. I was wrong. A week later, August disappeared. No goodbye, no message, no trace. His phone went straight to voicemail. His apartment was empty. The neighbors said they hadn't seen him in days. Eleanor was still in jail. Raymond was still in a hospital bed. So why did it feel like something was wrong? That feeling answered itself 2 nights later. I woke up to the sound of scratching, slow, careful, at my front door. I didn't move. I didn't breathe. Then I saw it. A piece of paper sliding under the door. When the sound stopped, silence returned. I waited a full minute before picking it up. My hands were shaking so badly I almost dropped it. There was no envelope, just a single sentence, written neatly. "He chose the wrong side." No signature. I already knew who it was from. The next morning, the news broke. August Morris had turned himself in, not for his parents, for something else. The headline burned into my eyes. "Man confesses to series of neighborhood harassment cases." The article listed addresses. One of them was our old house. Another belonged to the family currently being terrorized. And another was my current address. I felt sick. I went to see August in custody. He looked exhausted, hollow, like someone who hadn't slept in weeks. "She made me do it," he said quietly through the glass. "Not directly, but she taught me how." "You didn't have to continue," I said. "I know," he replied. "That's why I'm here." I leaned closer. "She sent me a message," I whispered. "She said you chose the wrong side." August's eyes widened. "That's not possible," he said. "She's locked up." I shook my head. "She's still playing," I said. "And I think this time, I'm the target." August swallowed hard. Then he said something that made my blood turn cold. "If she's moved on to you," he said, "then the end is close." That night, I returned home late. The hallway lights flickered as I walked toward my apartment. Something felt off. My door was closed, but the lock was turned from the inside. I stood there, frozen. Then I heard it, breathing, calm, slow. On the other side of the door, a familiar voice whispered, "Don't be afraid." And that was when I realized Eleanor Morris had never needed keys. Fear has a voice. I didn't scream. I don't know why. Maybe fear had drained all sound from my body. Maybe some part of me knew that screaming would only please her. I stood outside my own door, staring at the handle, locked from the inside. "Don't be afraid," Eleanor said again. Her voice was calm, almost kind. "I just want to finish our conversation." My hand trembled as I reached for my phone. No signal. Of course. I leaned closer to the door, my heart pounding so hard it hurt. "How did you get in?" I asked. She laughed softly. "Oh," she replied, "you'd be surprised how many doors people forget to truly close." The lock clicked. The door opened slowly. Eleanor Morris stood in my living room like she belonged there. She had changed clothes since the last time I saw her. Clean, neutral, almost invisible. She looked like any harmless old woman you might pass on the street. Except for her eyes. They were alive, sharp, watching every movement I made. "You shouldn't be here," I said, backing away. She stepped forward. "You invited me," she replied. "I did not." She smiled. "You listened," she said. "That's an invitation." I tried to keep distance between us, circling toward the kitchen where I knew there were knives. She noticed instantly. "Ah," she said, still thinking like prey. "Why me?" I demanded. "You've ruined enough lives." She tilted her head. "Because you saw us," she said. "And you escaped?" Her voice hardened. "People who escape fear are dangerous. They remind others that leaving is possible." I swallowed. "You taught your son to hurt people," I said, "and now you want to blame everyone else." Eleanor's smile vanished. "Don't you dare speak his name like that," she snapped. For the first time, I saw real anger. "He was weak," she continued, "too emotional, too soft. I tried to fix him, by breaking him, by shaping him," she corrected. She walked toward the window and looked out at the street. "You know," she said thoughtfully, "fear is like a language. Once you learn it, you can speak it anywhere." She turned back to me. "You think this ends with prison walls, or police reports?" she asked. "No. It ends when people forget how to be afraid." My phone buzzed in my pocket. Signal. 1 bar. Eleanor noticed. Her eyes narrowed. "Who are you calling?" she asked. "No one," I lied. She stepped closer. I backed up, and my heel hit the coffee table. I stumbled, falling hard onto the couch. She was on me in seconds. Her hands were stronger than they looked. She leaned in close, her breath cold against my ear. "You should have stayed gone," she whispered. A loud bang echoed through the apartment. The door burst open. "Get down, police." Eleanor froze. For one brief moment, fear flashed across her face. Then it disappeared. She raised her hands slowly, still smiling. "Later, they told me how they found her." Raymond Morris had finally spoken. He had whispered one sentence to a nurse. "She won't stop." That was enough. They traced her movements, cameras, old habits, patterns only someone who lived with her could know. August had been right. Fear leaves footprints. Eleanor was taken away that night. For real this time. No bail, no release, no return. As she passed me in handcuffs, she leaned closer and said one last thing. "This isn't over," she whispered. "It never is." Days passed, then weeks. The nightmares slowly faded. The phone stopped buzzing. The lock stayed quiet. I started to believe it was finally done, until I received a letter. Not threatening, not cruel, just 4 words, written in familiar handwriting. "I'm finally free." It was signed, August, and suddenly, I wasn't sure who had really escaped. The thing fear leaves behind. I read the letter 3 times, not because it was long, but because it was light. Too light. 4 words. No anger. No guilt. No explanation. "I'm finally free." I folded the paper slowly, my hand steady in a way that scared me. Freedom is a dangerous word. People who suffer crave it. People who hurt others use it. I didn't know which one August had become. I tried to find him. I shouldn't have. But some questions rot if you don't dig them out. The return address was blank. The postmark told me nothing useful. I contacted a lawyer, then the police, then someone who owed my father a favor. August Morris had been released under supervision. Psych evaluation, improved. Risk assessment, moderate. Recommendation, distance from previous environment. In other words, he was free enough. No one could tell me where he went. Only that he was no longer here. Months passed. Life rebuilt itself quietly. I moved again. New city, new job, new routines. I stopped looking over my shoulder every 5 seconds. I learned how to sleep with the lights off. Fear faded into memory. That was when it became dangerous. One evening, I stopped by a bookstore after work. Old habit, comfort place. I wandered into the psychology section without thinking. A book on control caught my eye. I pulled it from the shelf. A note slipped out and landed at my feet. I already knew the handwriting. Fear is a seed. Some people bury it. Some people water it. No signature. No date. Just a sentence that felt like fingers closing around my throat. I didn't tell anyone. I put the note in my pocket and walked home slowly, scanning every reflection in every window. Nothing happened. That was worse. The news broke a week later. Different city, different street, same pattern. A family filed a complaint over property lines. Fake legal letters followed. Harassment escalated. Police found nothing. Cameras malfunctioned. 5 months of psychological pressure. Then silence. The family moved away. The neighbors said they never really saw the man next door. Just heard him sometimes, pacing, talking, laughing softly. I didn't need confirmation, but I got it anyway. An email arrived that night, from an address I didn't recognize. Subject line, still afraid. The message contained one photo, a white fence, new, perfectly straight. Behind it, a familiar shadow stood just out of frame. I deleted the email, not because I was scared, but because I understood. Some people think fear ends when the monster is locked away. They're wrong. Fear doesn't live in houses. It doesn't belong to families. It doesn't die with age. Fear learns. It adapts. It moves. August didn't escape fear. He inherited it, perfected it, and now he was teaching it to others. I stopped trying to warn people. Who listens to stories like this? Who believes that some nightmares don't end, they relocate? Instead, I do one thing. Whenever I move somewhere new, I watch the fences. I listen to the silence. And if a neighbor ever smiles too calmly, or cares a little too much about boundaries, I leave. Because I learned something the Morizes never did. Fear isn't power. Fear is a warning. And this time, I won't wait for it to speak.